Well, for more reaction on North Korea's latest nuclear tests, I'm now joined live by war correspondent and columnist Eric Margolis, who knows the region very well. Eric, it looks like the sanctions didn't seem to frighten Pyongyang off on this occasion. Will anything change now?
No, I don't think so. The North Koreans are very tough. They're very determined. And they've got a 1.1 million man armed forces, which is very efficient. They're not going to be threatened by anybody at this point. And nobody, I think, is going to take any military measures against them. They know they're pretty secure. And, you know, really what's going on now is not a reason for panic or crisis. As Minister Lavrov rightly pointed out, we need diplomacy in this issue, not more empty threats.
Obama talking about swift and credible responses needed. The UN has promised to beef up sanctions. But you're saying negotiations, but it seems that nothing seems to deter Pyongyang.
Well, Pyongyang feels it's under siege. And I'm no fan of North Korea, but we have to understand what their thinking is. They feel that South Korea intends to engulf them and take them over. With its huge economy and power, that the United States is threatening to overthrow the North Korean regime for being defiant. So they're under pressure. We also look at this in the context of inter-Korean rivalry. The South and North Koreans constantly are playing tit for tat against each other to see who can have the bigger stick or the bigger, taller flagpole or the higher building. And in this case, the North Koreans have shamed the South Koreans by coming out with their third nuclear test, whereas South Korea was developing nuclear weapons about a decade ago, but was caught by the U.S., and the U.S. said no way and shut down the South Korean program. Now the North Koreans are saying they're the real authentic Koreans and they're the defender of the Korean Peninsula.
Where does this put China? How should Beijing respond to this? After all, it did accept those sanctions earlier, didn't it? And it's seen as an ally for North Korea. But is it in a difficult position? Is this now a really challenging diplomatic position Beijing is in now?
I don't think Beijing is in as difficult a position as the Western media wishes that it was. The Chinese don't like to be seen as the only nation supporting North Korea, not well thought of anywhere in the world. But on the other hand, North Korea is important to China strategically. It's the buffer zone. The Chinese believe that if North Korean, the regime there would implode, collapse like East Germany did, or Russia, that the South Koreans would move in, gobble up North Korea, and the U.S. would have forces, its forces would move close to the Chinese border. China does not want this, so China really needs to keep the North Korean regime going, unappetizing as it is. My own guess is that the Chinese will denounce the North Koreans, but will continue quietly supporting them, as China is the main source of oil and food for North Korea. And I don't think the Chinese are going to shut off the taps and see chaos ensue in North Korea.
Put it in perspective for us, Eric. Just how serious a threat is this to the US and indeed Europe? We're talking about an anti-missile defense shield, for example, and there's often that talk about a perceived threat from Iran and the likes of North Korea. But could these tests really eventually produce a weapon that could be a threat to the US and Europe?
Yeah, Bill, I think it will. Eventually, the Koreans will manage to miniaturize a nuclear warhead to the point where it can be carried atop one of their medium or certainly their long-range ICM missiles, which they're developing. And we just saw one put a satellite into orbit. So the North Koreans will do it. But really the big question is not can they, but why would they? These programs, and South Korean defense officials have told me this too, are purely defensive.
Well, and why would they and can they? I mean, can they afford it? It's a poor country, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, this is costing them estimates of up to $2 billion. But as Zulfikar Ali Bhutto said in Pakistan years ago, when we will get our nuclear weapon, even if it means we have to eat grass. And that's what North Korea is doing. But the survival of the regime depends on nuclear weapons. Just ask the Iraqis and the Libyans about this. So North Korea wants this national pride.
Okay, just briefly, you talk about the survival of the regime. Is it under threat? We've got a new man at the helm there, but what is going on behind the scenes politically, just very briefly?
there's unrest. People are hungry. They see rich South Korea next door. We saw this all with East Germany. They are afraid the regime will come crashing down. So this is one way to shore it up.
Eric, really good to talk to you. Thanks so much for your thoughts on this. Eric Margolis joining us live there.